Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in again. Today we are going to focus on our hips and hamstrings, and this is my favorite little sequence for when I'm feeling really sore after perhaps a long competition or a heavy training session, and also one that I love to do to just maintain some mobility and flexibility, or perhaps work on those things. So all you need for this one is your mat or some space on the floor. So let's get started. Okay, so you're going to come over onto your hands and your knees. Okay, and from this tabletop position, you're just going to step your left foot up towards your left wrist. Okay, and you might actually have to even grab your foot and slide it up your mat. What we want to make sure is that your knee and your ankle are stacked, that your toes aren't behind your knee. Okay, so from here, you may or may not be able to creep your right knee a little further back behind you. You're going to try to keep the spine nice and long, so not super round through the upper back, but thinking shoulder blades squeezing, tail reaching towards the back, head reaching towards the front. And we're just going to pause here for a couple of breaths, thinking about letting the hips slide forward and sink just a little bit. And this is a good place to just check in with your breath, make sure that you're actually able to breathe, that it's not too intense. Good, and then with your exhale, we're going to take the hips back and lift the toes. Okay, so I see a lot of athletes, they get into this like knee locked out situation, which really isn't healthy for the knee. So keep a little micro bend in the knee. What I want you to think about is pulling back through the toes and reaching out through your tailbone. And we're working on keeping the spine nice and flat. Okay, so you don't have to worry about fully straightening your leg. That may come over time, but right now think about the toes. Think about reaching through your tail. Good. And then you're going to exhale and come back into that lunge, and we're going to do that back and forth a couple times. Exhaling back, pull the toes, press through the tail, back into the lunge. Exhaling back. Okay, you can start to play with this a little bit too. You might bring your hands up onto your front thigh, or even add the arms for some additional balance work. Okay, fingers come back to the floor, tail goes back, toes lift. Okay, one more time, forward into the lunge, taking your variation with the arms, and then fingers back to the floor. So from here, you're going to walk your left foot a little bit wider on your mat. You're going to turn your toes at about a 45-degree angle, and as you exhale, just going to allow your knee to open a little bit towards the side. So you've sort of at this point rolled onto the knife edge of your foot. You're still thinking about letting the hips come a little bit down towards the floor, but they're square to the floor. So my right hip isn't dropping way down. Okay, and I'm just letting my left knee open. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on there. Okay, depending on your level of flexibility, you may be able to bring the forearms to the floor, but if you feel like your butt is way higher than your head, you're going to be a much happier person with your hands on the mat, and that's something that you can work to. Okay, and then you're going to creep your foot back in. Okay, we're going to settle into the lunge one more time. Think about lifting through the collarbones. We're going to press back through the hip one more time. Okay, and then as we come back into the front foot, we're going to actually kind of creep our left foot across our mat. I call it a wiggle walk. Okay, and then we're going to bring our left knee down towards the floor and find ourselves in a pigeon-like posture. Okay, so I'd encourage you to sit here for a moment and just make sure that your hips are square to the mat. You're not sunk over onto one side. Okay, and when you feel like your hips are square, you can bring your forearms to the floor. You might even be able to rest your head. And, depending on the time that you have, I'd encourage you to stay here for a little bit. If you can take 5 breaths here, that's great. If you could take 15 or 20 breaths here, that's great. So you can kind of gauge how much time you can spend in this posture, but just know you're safe here for a considerable amount of time, and this is a great place where you can really just work on that mindfulness and the focus on your breath. So when you're ready to come out of that, you can place your hands onto the mat. You're going to curl your back toes under, and you're going to press through the hands so that you can sweep your left foot back towards your right. And we haven't really talked about downward facing dog, but we're just going to pause here on the hands and feet and pedal the feet a few times. This is just nice to get the blood moving back in through the hips. And if you pause in down dog, you may notice that one side feels a lot different than the other. Okay, so when you're ready from here, we're going to repeat on the other side. So you're going to step your right foot towards your right wrist and release your left knee to the floor. And we find ourselves in our lunge again, which may feel quite different than it did on the other side. And that's okay, just be aware. Okay, so pausing here for a couple breaths as we let the hips settle and let them slide forward a little bit, lifting through the chest. Okay, and then you're going to exhale, take the hips back, really lift the toes. Remember that little micro bend in the knee is healthy. Keep trying to press back through the tail. Good. Coming back into your lunge. And like we did on the other side, we're just going to kind of seesaw in and out of this a few times with breath. So you're inhaling, coming forward. Exhaling, going back. And just notice how things change. Our body really likes repetition. So as you repeat this and as you practice this, you're going to notice some differences come along pretty quickly. Okay? A couple more times, you might add the hands to the thigh, perhaps adding the arms. Exhaling, fingers down, hips back. One more time. Okay, and this time, hands down to the mat inside of your right foot. So again, you're going to wiggle walk your foot a little wider. Turn the toes at about a 45-degree angle, and then exhale to let the knee drop. Now, as always, you've heard me say this already today and in other videos, we are very seldom balanced on both sides of the body, so if this side feels different, just be aware of that. Okay, no judgment, just know that's something that you can work on. Elbows may or may not be an option on this side. You can bring your right foot back to the mat, wiggle it back in line. We'll take the hips back one more time. And then coming back forward, we're going to do that same little wiggle walk across with the right foot towards the left side of the mat. So the right knee is going to come down towards the right hand. Hips are square. You can sit here for a moment and just check and make sure that you're not stuck over on your right hip. Okay, and then you can come down onto the forearms, or perhaps just laying out for a few breaths. And one thing I've learned through yoga and having been an athlete is often these positions are quite uncomfortable. But that's stories that your brain is telling you. Your body is okay here as long as you're not experiencing any kind of sharp pains. So do your best to keep your focus on your breath. And when you find that your brain is starting to take you away, then you notice that and you make a conscious choice to just come back and breathe. And that takes a lot of practice. But it's a super amazing skill, both for your yoga, both for your work as an athlete, in school, in life, in work, all of the above. So as we did on the other side, when you're ready to come out of that, hands to the mat, curl the back toes under. You're going to press the right foot back to meet the left. Pedal the feet a few times, pressing into the right heel, bending the left knee, and switching. And then take a moment, perhaps in your downward facing dog, noticing how the legs and the hips are feeling. And as you exhale, you can come back to the knees and sit back onto the feet. So that's it. A short little sequence that really focuses in through the hips and the hamstrings. Again, do this when you're sore. Do this to help with your mobility and your flexibility. A moving version of this could even be used as part of your warm-up. So hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you again soon.